Okay, that seems stable-ish. Shall I make a start, Abe?
Let's do it.
Brilliant. Hello, everybody today. My name's Jamie Simmonds. I'm the documentation manager here at Author.it. Today, I'm going to be presenting the majority of this webinar to you that talks about New Word, how to configure it, its features, benefits, and some of its limitations. I'll be joined by one of my co-workers. Abe, would you like to introduce yourself?
Only if this starts. Yep. Hello, everyone. I'm Abhay Choksi, product manager, owner at Author.it. Really excited to be here. We want to share what's coming up with the new word and provide you an opportunity to get into a sneak peek of the upcoming release. So with that, we'll hand it over to Jamie.
Great. Just some minor housekeeping before we start. This presentation presumes you're an intermediate level Author.it user or higher who understands how to configure and publish to legacy Word. So that means I won't be explaining concepts like how to create a book to publish to New Word or style mapping or setting up headers and footers and media objects. To be honest, that's purely for time reasons. If I had to go over everything from scratch, I don't think we could squeeze everything in 90 minutes. If you aren't quite at that level of knowledge yet, that's okay. Watch the webinar anyway, and maybe just have a visit of our Knowledge Centre afterwards so you can get up to speed. Also, please use the Q&A feature that is in this webinar. Abe will be curating those questions, so don't panic if you don't see yours appear right away. He'll just be doing that to help keep them on topic and maybe limit it to questions that we can actually answer within this webinar. If you do have a question that we can't answer, don't worry, we'll do our best to get in touch and provide an answer to that for you. Great. Well, I hope there's plenty of things that you remember from today's webinar that are worth remembering, but if nothing else, I hope you at least take away these key points. First up is New Word publishes much faster than legacy Word. That's going to be the main benefit of New Word, and that we'll talk about today. Also, we are removing legacy Word from Author.it Cloud in 2026 R1, which we'll be releasing in Q1 of next year. We were originally going to do this in 2025 R3, our upcoming release, but we pushed it back after getting some feedback from you about configuration and internal testing requirements. Until then, you can switch freely between New Word and legacy Word, but after 2026 R1, you must use New Word. For our Author.it on-premises customers, legacy Word will remain an option. You'll be able to switch freely between the two, and that is not scheduled to change. That said, support for legacy Word also ends in 2026 R1 for on-premises. After that release, we won't be fixing any bugs for it, adding new features, and the support team won't help configuring it. Because of all of those points, if you use legacy Word, we recommend setting up and testing New Word publishing now. It's going to be the best way to avoid interruptions to your publishing. Great, into the meat of the seminar. Let's talk about why Author.it is moving to New Word. Legacy Word, it's one of our oldest publishing formats, I think possibly the first, or one of the first at least, and it does show. The technology and components it's built on top of have become increasingly difficult to maintain, making it difficult for us to release updates or bug fixes for it. And now we've reached a point where that's no longer feasible. It's a situation those of you who are in the technology sector will probably be familiar with. No matter how good or reliable something has been in the past, eventually you reach a point where you just have to update its underlying technology. As well as that, legacy Word's publishing times, they're really placing unnecessary strain on Author.it Cloud's publishing servers. Reducing that publishing time will mean faster and more reliable publishing for everyone, even those who don't use Word. The same principle applies to Author.it on-premises. Legacy Word has become a bottleneck for publishing and is really forcing publishing servers to require more resources than they should in on-premises environments. And since we first introduced Word publishing many years ago, a lot of other CCMS have come to market. We're really not the only player in the game anymore. Word publishing has changed, and we know our Word publishing needs to change if we want to keep up, and New Word lets us do that. And of course, New Word also comes with a whole bunch of benefits for you, which I'll cover in this next section. The big one, like I alluded to earlier, is speed. New Word it's incredibly fast. New Word publishes using resolved XML, and as a result, we've found it comparable to other resolved XML outputs like PDF Pro CSS or Magellan. Obviously, your exact results are going to vary depending on the content of your book and a lot of other factors, but we've found it at least twice as fast and often quite a lot more. One of the more immediately obvious changes New Word brings is that it uses .x templates to publish .x Word templates and publishes .x Word documents instead of .templates and doc files. That's unlikely to revolutionize your workflows, but docx files, the most modern standard of Word documents, they bring in some benefits that we think are worth noting. Typically, docx files are smaller than doc files. They're compatible with a wider range of applications. In particular, they're more likely to keep advanced formatting when opened with something other than Word, which in today's cell phone heavy use can be surprisingly common. They're less prone to corruption. They're much more difficult to infect with malicious macros. They have higher quality image compression, which contributes to that smaller file size. They're based on the Open Office XML standard, which is actively being maintained and updated, unlike the old binary format doc is based on. And docx files also support a bunch of extra features over doc files, such as inserting online videos, which gives us the option to support those features if you guys ask for it. Moving to New Word also means publishing on a technology framework that's easier for us to troubleshoot, maintain, and update, which in other words means we can provide a better experience for you. This next point can get a little confusing. AuthorIt has the file object types linked picture file and embedded image or OLE objects, which are commonly just called linked images and embedded images by both us and you, our customers. Word files also have two ways to handle images, as in how Microsoft Word uses that terminology, linking them or embedding them. For the purposes of clarity, in this slide, I'm strictly talking about how Word uses those phrases, as in when talking about how images are stored in a Word document. Now, in Legacy Word, every image publishes as a linked image. It's not actually stored inside the file. And that made sense a long time ago when we first released Word publishing. In a world with large binary files and low portability requirements and really bad internet speeds. But that simply isn't the world we live in anymore, right? Our support team has known for many years that most organizations run a macro over their legacy Word outputs to convert linked images to embedded images instead. And when we investigated to see precisely how many libraries were doing this in AuthorIt Cloud, we found it was virtually everyone. So for New Word, we've made this automatic. It just happens. When you publish a new Word, every image is embedded inside the Word document. You don't need to set it up or configure it in any way. Some more benefits of New Word that are worth mentioning are the new table of content options that are coming in R3. If you're familiar with the update toc macro, this takes most of those options and puts them directly inside the author module instead. The only thing it doesn't do is open Word and force it to update its page numbers. So these new options include specifying a start and end level for the table of contents. So for example, currently you can configure your table of contents to display, say, 7 levels of headings, but with these options you could configure it to only display levels 2 to 7 instead. You can also exclude page numbers from some toc levels. So for example, if your toc goes from level 2 to 7, you could say that page numbers are only displayed from levels 2 to 5 and that 6 and 7 exclude page numbers. It also lets you select a tab leader directly from author, which means a bit less configuration inside the Word template. I've personally found that particular bit of config can be tricky in the past too. You can also specify specific paragraph or character styles that will become part of the table of contents. For example, if you have a paragraph style in author called mega heading, You could set it up so that any text with that style becomes a table of contents entry, which is an option that Word has had inside it for a while. Please note these options, they're currently exclusive to New Word. They won't work in legacy Word or in other print outputs like PDF Pro CSS, at least for the time being. All right, since I've been at Authorit, we've released a few new output formats, all of which have required configuration that sits outside of the Authorit product. That ranged from having to install additional applications if you're an Authorit on-premises user, to cloud customers having to submit a ticket to support to configure a publishing profile with some post-publishing actions, which you couldn't do on your own. New Word does not have any of that. It is possibly my favorite part of New Word. But then I would say that I'm responsible for creating the documentation for it. Just like Legacy Word, all you need to set up, everything you need to set up New Word is inside the author module and Microsoft Word. You can do everything without our involvement and without having to do any additional installs. I will explain exactly how to configure and set up New Word shortly in the presentation. In fact, I think that's the next section. It is. Okay, great. Next, I'm going to show you how to configure New Word. And then after that, I'll do a side-by-side comparison of a legacy Word output and a New Word output. Please note, everything I do and show you today will be in an R3 environment, as opposed to the R2 ones, which you're likely working in currently. R3 comes with a bunch of new features and fixes for New Word, and it's going to be released soon. And I didn't want to show you everything in R2, only for it to immediately become out of date. Right, the first part of setting up New Word is creating a Word template. Some of you will only need one template, others are going to need a lot more than that. For today's demonstration, I'm only going to show you setting up one Word template. I'm also going to assume that you at least have some knowledge about how these templates are used in Legacy Word, as I mentioned at the start. If you don't, that's okay. The main thing you need to know is that Word templates determine what your paragraph and character styles look like when you publish, and also the contents of headers and footers. All right, let's download that template. Now I just need to open it off screen so that it actually opens as a Word template as opposed to a Word document. Brilliant, the demo gods have smiled on me. So here we have a Word template the Word template that I just downloaded. Until now, it's been used for legacy Word, meaning it's saved as a dot file, the older format for Word templates. To start off, I'm going to save a copy in the latest format, .x, then work in the copy. Just put that to a more convenient location. There we go. The thing about Word templates typically being empty is it does make it a bit boring for a demo, but bear with me. All right, for some of you, converting to the .x template there, like I just did, that's actually going to be enough. Word is very good at converting old dot templates to the new .x format, and the template will already have all the paragraph and character styles that you need because you will have set them up for legacy Word, right? If you're using frames in the auto text entries for headers and footers, you may need to remove them or convert them to text boxes. There are some specific limitations and impacts of using frames in headers and footers that I'll talk about in a bit more detail later. This template actually does use a lot of frames, but they don't affect publishing at all, so I'm not going to get rid of them. If you do want to get rid of them, it's really just as simple as inserting the auto text entry into your document. Here we go. And then also inserting a text box and copying and pasting the content in. Just for time reasons, I won't run through those steps, but if you've created a Word template, you're probably pretty good at that by now. All right, after you have your Word template all set up, if you're in Author at Cloud, you're going to upload it to the Files module, as I've done earlier. And then we're going to create the publishing profile that you need. Fortunately for New Word, setting up the publishing profile is very straightforward. First, you create the profile or edit an existing one if you prefer. I'm going to edit an existing one that I prepared earlier. Change the publishing format to Word if it isn't already. Make sure that New is selected under Legacy and New. And then go to the Theme tab and select the Word template, the .x one that you just created. So in that case, it's this one here for me. Just like Legacy Word, you can leave this blank if you want. You should see that will let me save that. It doesn't do any validation to prevent it. Just going to quickly assign that back. Brilliant. You can leave that blank and leave it up to your books and book templates, which Word templates that you use. And that's just done via this option here. That said, the option on the publishing profile does take priority if it's there, and we found that most organizations tend to assign the Word template to the publishing profile rather than the book. All right, last up, you're going to go to the Actions tab and remove any Word macro post-publishing actions. That's a type of Word macro that would be just under here if I could scroll down. If you're an author on premises, that's very easy. You just select the macro, then click Remove. If you're using Author at Cloud, you won't be able to remove those directly. Probably the best thing for you to do is just create a publishing profile from scratch. But if there's some before publishing, if some other actions on the profile that you really need, you can submit a ticket with support and we can remove those for you. The Word macro, specifically post-publishing actions. Of course, there is a lot of other configuration I could do on this publishing profile right now, such as add filters, etc. But in terms of setting up New Word, selecting that publishing format and the theme and removing those actions, that's it, you're done. That's all you need. All right, if you're watching this webinar, odds are you've already have a number of books in your library that you publish to Legacy Word. And so when it comes to creating a book to publish to New Word, you're probably good to go. The features that New Word won't be supporting in the long term, at least, are typically quite old and won't be used by many of you. Some of them, even our most experienced author employees hadn't even heard of. They're that old. That said, if you have file objects that are directly inside the book, so I'm just going to track down a file object to demonstrate that. Here we go. If you have file objects that are inside your book contents directly, like this, instead of, say, inside a topic, you'll need to add them to a topic instead. So you'll need to remove them from the talk and add them to the topic. That's fairly easy. You can achieve exactly the same effect that this achieves, having it directly inside the book's contents, by just creating a topic, dragging and dropping it inside, and then leaving the topic's publishing headings blank. No, let's not save that. Cool. So that's everything you need for setup. I'm now going to show you a side-by-side comparison of Legacy Word and New Word. I'm not going to publish live to those two outputs, partly for time reasons, partly because I feel like I'd be tempting fate. But I do have some publishing jobs that I prepared earlier. So that is that book that I had open for you before. And I'm going to at least download them live and then put them next to you just to demonstrate that they actually are from this environment. If the download times are too long, I do have some backups pre-downloaded, don't worry. All right, great. That's the Word doc. This is the Legacy Word document. Now, if I open the Legacy Word output and start scrolling through it, like I will shortly, you'll see it's a short but reasonably complex document. Here we go. So I've got an image on the title page, about 70 pages long, a variety of column sizes to headers and footers, page sizes, and even some, if I scroll down far enough, somewhere in here is some landscape pages. There we go. Great. All right, let's just put that on the left temporarily. Sorry, the presentation bar is getting in my way. There we go. Now let's do the same thing for new word. There we go. Now, if I open my new Word document and place these two docs side by side, you will see that they are nearly identical. Of course they are, right? Obviously, that makes for a boring demo, two Word documents side by side that are basically the same. But at the end of the day, this is the goal. Publishing two Word the same, but faster and more modern. If you repeat this experiment yourself in your own environments, so publish the same book to Legacy Word, then immediately publish it to New Word, I strongly recommend going to the Review tab and using the compare function to see exactly how different the documents are. They are produced using different methods, so there's a lot of noise that comes with that. Word will complain about a lot of changes which are actually invisible to your end users, which unfortunately means it's really poor for a demo demonstration. But that said, I do think it's worth repeating outside of this context just to get everything. Full disclosure, these documents aren't identical. There are some difference, mostly because of the how New Word handles pagination compared to Legacy Word. I'll go over that in exactly more detail later, although it is worth noting all of that only results in, I think, a pages or maybe 2 pages worth of difference. Yeah. Of course, the main feature of New Word isn't actually how similar it is to Legacy Word, it's its speed, right? And that side-by-side comparison doesn't demonstrate that well, obviously. But the logs from a publishing job, they do demonstrate that well, and I have some I prepared from earlier. The Word documents I just showed you are a little bit small to demonstrate this point. So to kind of better demonstrate the speed differences between Legacy Word and New Word, I just tripled the content in that book. You can see it here, hence the ×3. And we can get a handle on how much faster New Word is over Legacy Word by checking out these logs. Legacy Word started at 240-ish, and the publishing job finished at around 313. So approximately 30 minutes, plus a couple of minutes to run some macros. New Word, on the other hand, started also at 240, around 240, so just seconds later. I'd know, I'm the one who ran the jobs. And it finished at 247, right? Just 7 minutes, so less than a quarter of the time for the equivalent Legacy Word book. And those kind of speed increases, very common. Like that's the type of thing we are typically seeing. It's really hard to overstate just how much faster New Word is than over Legacy Word. Okay, in this next section, I'm going to be going over the limitations of New Word, not just in 2025 R2, but also beyond that. New Word's first release was in 2025 R2, our current release, and it was intended for an early release and previewing and evaluation purposes. As you'd expect, that did mean it was missing several key features. Some examples include borders for file objects and adding superheadings to the table of contents. The two features I suspect your authors most likely noticed are missing are linked picture files, as in the source type for file objects, and also that you can't publish tables that don't have borders, which we know a lot of you use to manipulate formatting. If you'd like to view a complete list of those features, you can do so in our Knowledge Center. I'm not going to go through them one by one here. It would take a bit long. And we'll provide a link to that. A link for that is provided in these slides, which I'm hoping to give to you sometime after the seminar. Importantly, however, support for nearly all of those unsupported features is coming in our next release, which is not far away. All right, now for the limitations you can expect in 2025 R3 and beyond. So in other words, a little bit more long-term. So in 2025 R2, all tables published by New Word, as I just alluded to, they publish as if they have full borders on every cell and no shading. In R3, you'll get a little more control over that. You can configure which borders are published. You can merge cells together, and you can also provide shading. So all of that is supported. Everything you'd find under the Advanced tab in Author, however, is coming in a future release. So that's vertical alignment, text direction, and repeating heading rows and allowing row breaks. I might just show that visually, actually. Great. So everything you find under that Advanced kind of section of the Layout tab. There is also a very small number of object properties that New Word won't support even after 2025 R3. Section start new column, so that's an option on media objects to determine how the section starts. In Legacy Word, that option caused us. In Legacy Word, that inserted an end of section marker into the document just at the end of the last bit of content. So visually, that meant your content started in a new column, but on the same page. That end of section marker doesn't actually exist in the latest version of New Word. As far as I can tell, you can't insert it in docx documents. So now section start new column inserts a section break instead. From a practical point of view, that means your content still starts in a new column, but on the next page instead of on the same page. Please note, if you do want to force a column break, you can still do that just by using the normal topic break functions, by using insert new column under topic properties. So this one's quite hard to say out loud. These superheading options. So I might just So superheadings, under superheadings, we have a bunch of different options. These bottom three are not supported by New Word and will not be in the long term. This is due to a surprising technical limitation of one of the third-party components that we use. For that reason, we can't schedule a fix for it at this time, but we are going to keep an eye on this limitation, and if the component that we use fixes it, we'll make sure that it gets fixed as well. I will show you a workaround for this later in the presentation. So file objects, they have a source type called linked document file. Basically, it lets you insert a Word, RTF, or another text file into your Word document. So Word documents within Word documents. Because the author application or author it has no idea what is in that file, this option has always been a little bit unpredictable, truth be told. And that's still true for New Word. It also isn't commonly used, and to be honest, it would take a huge amount of effort for us to guarantee its functionality entirely. Effort we think is better spent on more commonly used features. As a result, we've decided that while we won't prevent you from doing this, you can still do it, insert plain other text files into your Word document. We warn it may not work as expected, and that the further from plain text the inserted file is, the more unpredictable the impact's going to be. As I alluded to earlier during the demonstration, New Word won't display any file objects that you've added directly into a book instead of inside a topic. We may support this in the future, but for now we aren't prioritizing it because, as far as we can tell, it's very rarely used. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people watching this webinar right now had no idea you could do that before I showed you in the demonstration. So file object variables, this is scheduled for R4, but you still won't be able to do it in R3. New Word doesn't support file object variables at all in 2025 R2. but it does have some limited support in them for them in 2025 R3. You can place a file object variable inside a topic, but New Word will only ever publish the variable's default value. It won't change it based on book or topic assignments, which we know is how some of you use them. If you don't know what these are, file object variables, don't worry, you're not alone. This type of variable is a pretty old feature that's no longer best practice for most of you. That said, as I said, full support for them is scheduled for 2025 R4. So in 2025 R2, our current release, using frames or text boxes, in your headers and footers sometimes causes New Word publishing to fail entirely. That is a bug. That's fixed, or that is fixed in 2025 R3. But there are some difficulties in using frames still, as I've kind of pre-explained. Specifically, they may cause the page number entries in your table of contents or table of figures to be incorrect. They may also not have the correct layout and formatting if you use frames in an advanced way, such as a header entry that places multiple frames in a variety of different locations in your document. If your templates only have a few headers and footers with frames, we recommend just removing them or replacing them with text boxes if you do kind of use advanced positioning. If you are only using those frames to make sure content is placed inside the header or footer of your Word document, instead of, say, halfway down the page for some random reason, you can likely remove those frames. New Word, it's really good at moving auto text entries into the space it should be in the header or footer quite effectively, unless, of course, you use a text box to force it to place that content somewhere else. But if it's just floating on the page, New Word is quite good at either putting it in the header or footer respectively, so a frame's probably not required. If you have a lot of frames in your templates and converting all of them is just going to be too time consuming, we recommend converting your existing Word templates to the .x format, as I showed earlier, and then making no further edits, then publishing to New Word with them. That way you can see if, and hopefully which, headers and footers will actually present a publishing issue. If publishing doesn't work as expected or particular headers or footers don't look correct, edit them in the Word template as needed, kind of one by one instead of a blanket approach, and then try publishing again. Obviously, that does still require time and effort, but it might be less time and effort for your organization. Please note, frames still work for paragraph and character styles as normal. You don't need to change anything about those. So if a particular paragraph style inserts a frame on the page, that will still be fine. Okay. So style generation, that's scheduled for R4. What do I mean by style generation? If a style is unmapped or author can't find it in your Word template, as in the style inside of the author module has no equivalent in the Word template that's being used for publishing, Legacy Word, it does its best to generate that style for you using the style definition settings in Author.it. So style definition is just a tab on style objects in Author.it. Basically, that means if a style looks bold in the author module when you're editing it in the topic, that's its formatting that you see as a user in the author module, it will also be bold in Legacy Word. That's kind of the end result. New Word doesn't do this yet. It will fall back to the normal style instead, but that feature is coming to New Word in R4. All right, no allow page break paragraphs. So earlier I mentioned that the two demonstration documents that I showed to you had slightly different pagination. This is why. Legacy Word inserts an empty paragraph with the style allow page break, so formatted literally how you see it on screen, and it inserts that before every topic heading. This is intended to be used with a Word template that has keep with next turned on for all of its paragraph styles, except for allow page break, so you can have very granular control over where page breaks are located. I might just quickly open a Word document and show you what I mean by that. A Word template, rather. This is getting into the weeds a bit, but it is an important part of how Legacy Word and New Word handle pagination. So legacy Word's intended setup back when Authority was kind of first setting it up many years ago was to have literally every style have these three options selected, and then use a style called allow page break to very manually and granularly control exactly when pages could break across content, when a new page could start. New Word does not insert this paragraph or actually any extra paragraph before headings. Now, it's debatable whether the removal of the allow page break paragraph style is a limitation or not, given one of our frequently asked questions is actually, how do I remove that paragraph style? Many organizations want to get rid of it. And that's part of the reason why we decided to remove it and wait for your feedback about if it's required. I list it here just in case it is something that your organization is using. So in 2025 R2 and 2025 R3, so the next release, Word macros, they aren't supported at all. You can download or navigate to the published Word document, open it, and manually run macros over it, but there's no way to automate that process within Authority or to store the macros inside of the document itself. The macros have to come from some other Word template. The post-publishing actions that Legacy Word uses to do that, they just won't work. I am pleased to say that support for .m templates and .m files is being developed for New Word, and that will go a long way to solving the macro problem. For those of you who don't know, .m templates and .m files can store Word macros in them. So you'll at least be able to put the macros in the template and have them in the Word document and potentially run them automatically when the Word document is opened. Macros, they are a really big topic, so I'll talk about them more in their own section, but I wanted to note this here since it is a limitation we've seen discussed in Authority community. In fact, I think macros might be the next section. Yes, it is. Great. All right, let's do that deep dive into macros I just promised. In today's world, Authority runs macros over legacy Word publications via post-publishing actions, literally called Word macro. That is the name of the post-publishing action, the post-publishing action type. In Authority Cloud, that's done via a command line action, but it achieves the same thing. As I just said, neither of those types of post-publishing actions will work in New Word. If you run them, publishing will likely still succeed, unless you've done something, created a very crazy macro, but the actions will fail. It won't actually change the Word document in any way. In short, that means however you do Word macros today, you'll need to do them differently in New Word. Some of you may not need macros at all. We don't have visibility over what macros are used on your local systems, like what you do after you download a Word document from Authority Cloud. And obviously we can't see what Authority on-premises customers do, but we can see what Word macros Authority Cloud customers have asked us to create and how many times they've been run. So if Authority Cloud is running a macro for you or an equivalent action, we can see that. And surprisingly, the range of macros being run is small. The vast majority of time, it's either the embed linked images to convert linked images inside the Word document to embedded images, or the update TOC macro. In fact, it's rare that anything else is used. Both of those macros, they do things that New Word does automatically, as I've explained earlier in the presentation. So for at least some organizations, there's a chance you can just stop using macros. Others are going to need to find a way to make them work for New Word. And in 2025 R3, that's not very easy. As I just said, currently New Word only supports .x templates, which generate docx files. And you can't store macros in those file types. That's why we've started developing support for .m and .m files in New Word. As you may know, those are files that allow you to store Word macros in them. Essentially, you can add the macro to the .m template, then any files that you publish with it will be .m files that have that macro. For organizations that publish to Word but rely heavily on macros, realistically, you won't be able to make full use of New Word until we release support for .m and .m files. To be fully transparent, development for them has started, but we're still just determining exactly how long it will take. We're confident it will be months though, rather than years. So we recommend you spend R3 and R4 setting up new word publishing, creating or perhaps migrating the macros that you need, and testing out both so that you're ready to go come that release. All right, in this next section, I'm going to be talking about a bunch of gotchas. There are quite a few here, and I don't have much to demonstrate them visually, so forgive me if I'm dragging and dropping things from off screen, maybe to try and give you a better idea of how these gotchas work and exactly what they are. All right, so page numbers in the table of contents and table of figures. Unfortunately, when you publish a new word, the page numbers in tables of contents and tables of figures will sometimes be inaccurate. The longer the document, the more likely this is to be a problem. In fairness, this is a weakness New Word shares with Legacy Word and also just Word documents in general. So even if you're sharing them between two different people's computers, this can be a problem, and it's a bit unavoidable. New Word, it does its best to calculate page numbers, but there are some things it just can't account for. And fonts are one of the main examples. If your styles, if your Word document contains a font that we author it can't access, say over Author It Cloud, or New Word can't access for any reason, New Word will generate the document using a fallback font instead. And that fallback could and probably will have quite different characteristics to the font you selected, and it will affect how long a page is, in short. When you open the Word document, though, you'll have access to the original font or fonts that you specified, right? So New Word can't access them. It'll generate the doc, estimate the page sizes. You'll open the doc, you'll have access to the original fonts. They'll get inserted, and Word will detect that and use the fonts where appropriate. And now the document looks quite different to how New Word thought it did when it was calculating the page numbers. The solution to that is to right-click your table of contents or table of figures and manually update them, which will correct the pagination. And we know in the past some of you have done that via macro. And I might just literally demonstrate that. Realistically, this is probably something everyone in the school knows how to do, but for the sake of completeness, you can go right-click it, go update field, update page numbers only, and Word will recalculate these page numbers, and that will be accurate, right? If you do this on your computer, you will get accurate page numbers. And of course, that means if you print it to PDF immediately after, they'll be correct. As I mentioned earlier, style mapping is not in New Word just yet. It's scheduled for R4. That does mean you can't get away with unmapped styles as easily in New Word as you could in Legacy Word. In Legacy Word, if you had a real basic style, like applying bold or italics or something, you could get away with not mapping it, or more accurately, if you forgot to map it, you wouldn't necessarily see that in the final output, right? It would still look correct. So it is a bit of a gotcha in 2025 R2 and R3 for New Word. That previous unmapping, which would have been fine, will now make the document not look like it should. So that's something to keep an eye on if you're experimenting with New Word or even just straight publishing a New Word in R3. So in terms of templates, as I've emphasized throughout this kind of webinar, you need to convert your .templates to .x templates. But if you don't do that, if you either forget or you misclick, so your publishing profile, let's say your New Word one, if you link to an old style template instead, a .template, as you can see, it can be quite easy to misclick, given this is the only way you can tell the difference between the two. Basically, if New Word detects that you're using a .template, behind the scenes, it will do its best to enter a compatibility mode and do its best to kind of make up for the differences between those two templates. So publishing won't fail. New Word will still attempt to publish. This isn't as effective, though. New Word's kind of compatibility mode and attempts to make up for those shortcomings. It isn't quite as effective as converting the template to .x with Microsoft Word, as I showed you to do, and it can result in the document not looking how you expect, particularly with images and headers and footers. Um, you may get away with it. The document may look how you expect, or there may be some minor shortcomings. Um, so, which basically means it's a gotcha of if you thought you selected the right template, but it still looks incorrect, maybe just double check that you do actually have a .x template. That said, that feature of New Word kind of doing its best to convert the dot to an equivalent .x, it can be useful for organizations that only want to publish simple Word docs. It may mean you don't have to do the .x conversion, but we still recommend it strongly in the initial instance. Page breaks. So as I kind of explained earlier in the webinar, Legacy Word, it has some very specific pagination controls, like the allow page break paragraph that I mentioned earlier. And as a result, a lot of your Word templates may have these options selected on virtually every style. From what we can tell, the longer you've been using Author-it, the more true this is, right? This used to be how we did Legacy Word and how Author-it set it up for customers and how you, our customers, set it up. But in newer instances, for newer organizations, this appears to be not true. If basically the more recently you've started using Author-it, the more likely you are to turn that option off in the template and to just use topics, object properties to control how pagination occurs. On top of that, in Legacy Word, if a paragraph only contains an image, so it's literally just a paragraph with an image, Legacy applies keep with next to that paragraph and the one immediately before it. And it does that regardless of how you've set up your templates and whether they're off or on, and whether those three options are actually on the paragraph style being applied to the image. Legacy Word will just do that. New Word doesn't do that, right? It always respects the line and page break settings of the style applied to the paragraph that the image is in. How this is a gotcha is basically if you notice pages are breaking in different locations than what you'd expect, check our Knowledge Center on New Word pagination controls and the line and page break settings in your Word template. So those, I keep coming back to this, but it is the most important part of this kind of issue that you might face. Whoops, wrong one. So if your pages are breaking in places you don't expect, open up your Word template and check whether these options are enabled or perhaps disabled. Okay, that's it. That's actually the end of my gotchas. How are we doing for questions, Abe?
Yeah, there were a couple of questions and we have published them, but for the sake of this group, we can quickly address them in the call as well. So the first one was, would there be an option for the .m down the road?
Yeah.
Yes,
yes is the short answer.
Yep.
It's currently in development, as we were transparent with before. We can't pin down exactly how long it is going to take for it. We're in the discovery phase of figuring that out. But this isn't something we're targeting for 2027, right? Like the ideal really would be R4, and if that's possible, we'll do our best to make that happen. So as in 2025 R4, but certainly in the next few releases. Is that fair to say, Abe?
Yeah, that's fair to say.
I'm being careful about exactly what I commit to because I can see what our head developer is in the call as well, and I don't want him chewing me out later. What else do we have?
The next one is how are fit tables to Windows being tailed? And Julia's replied to it, when .m is available, you'll be able to run a macro over that. So that's one option. But if this becomes a repeated issue and we hear from a lot of customers, then we might look to introduce as a native feature with some option to choose between AutoFit versus not AutoFit. At this stage, it's not in any of the planned releases, but obviously that can be achieved once the .time feature is available with R4 or a little later. Yeah.
I see someone has asked, is there a known page limit? There's not a known page limit, but docx does have known file size limitations. They're kind of complicated. And actually that's a limitation that Legacy Word also has. So in terms of page limits, the author module is not going to restrict how many pages you can have, right? You can have as many topics inside your books as you want. We're not going to be the bottleneck there. If your Word document it's something like, sorry, I can't remember the exact limitation off my head, but it's like there's a set file size limitation for how much text you can have in the Word document, and there's also an upper limit on how big the docx can be in generally, just like Legacy Word. If you've never hit that limitation for Legacy Word, and I strongly doubt you have, it is multiple novels worth of text. Like it's a huge limit. You're almost certainly not going to hit that in New Word. Yeah, from it was hundreds of megabytes worth of text before a docx document will just fail to save. Okay, those are the only three. Honestly, I scheduled.
No, there's one
more.
more.
Oh,
There's
great.
one more. Yeah, yeah. So is there running 32-bit or 64-bit? We've had problems with the current Word running out of memory when publishing. Yeah. For that one,
that might be something Peter Vullings can answer if he's willing. We may have to unmute him. Did you catch that one, Pete?
I did. I was just fetching that information. I believe it's 64-bit, but in any case, the technology that we use for New Word is far more efficient on memory. It uses far less memory than our current Word publishing. And so we haven't hit any memory limits yet. But I know some of our customers use extremely large books, so we'll have to do more testing around that. But so far, it's been much better than Legacy Word.
there were a few more. Yep. So R1, R2, R3. Assume this is release 1, release 2, release 3. Yes.
Yes, sorry. The full names for 2025 R2, which is the current release of Author at Cloud, 2025 R3, which is the next release of Author at Cloud and Author at On Premises. They share the same number. You can also expect a 2025 R4 before the end of the year. I don't think we have an R5 planned at this stage, but obviously if there's some urgent need, we can make that happen. And then if you ever heard me say R1 at any point, I would have been referring to 2026 R1, which would be the first release of next year. Sorry if I've truncated that during the presentation. 2025 R3 is a bit of a mouthful, so I probably just got a bit lazy and said the short version.
We've got a question from Damien. There are a few known issues and sounds like it will be a little bit of work. And in fact, a lot of work for the admins to migrate templates. And we have massive amounts of templates with macros. So yeah, we are trying our best to get to a point where it's most stable, but we couldn't wait until we got everything out and then released, and then we got a bunch of feedback. So it's good to do this iteratively and get it ready as close to ready as possible. And that's been our approach and plan so far. And we've been receiving decent feedback around this, which is always a good thing, so that we can improve and make those changes faster rather than everything all at the end and make it available then.
I see also that Rosemary in her questions about the various releases asked for projected dates. Sorry, I didn't mean to ignore that portion of the question. I just didn't quite see it. Abe, do you want to give
Yeah, so there
some dates.
tentatively, yeah, I mean, tentatively before end of year there will be an R4, and next year there will be four more releases. That's what is planned, but things changed. It's fluid. Uh, but every quarter there will be mostly a release next year. So that's our approach. It has been since 25 now. So this year we've had planning to have four releases next year as well. Yeah.
How about R3? What can we say about the 2025 R3?
Early October.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Hopefully that answers your question, Rosemary. How are we going? Are we still having questions dribbling in?
Not really, no. That's all we had today. There's no more. Oh, there's one more. This needs to be migrated by early October. Not really. We will continue to have support until for legacy word until end of R1, which is hopefully by March next year. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I recommend setting up New Word publishing now, but that's just so that your publishing processes can roll straight into New Word from legacy word to New Word, right? So if you start, if for let's say you're an author at cloud user and you don't do anything to migrate between now and 2026 R1, our first release of next year, then legacy word will just disappear and you'll be forced to start setting up New Word from scratch, potentially with some publishing deadlines just on the horizon, right? And we really do not want that to happen to you. So yeah, the best approach would be continue publishing to legacy word if you know that works and you have a stable process with that, but start setting up New Word now and seeing what changes you need to make. And if you need some help, perhaps get in touch, and depending on your commercial arrangements with us, we might be able to help you out. And so come 2026 R1, New Word is ready to go, and you can just retire legacy word as you'll need to and move straight into New Word with no interruption.
Yeah, it's highly recommended that we start doing the work now so that it's much easier once R1 hits. Yeah. There were a few. Sorry, I was late to this. What's in New Word? I hadn't heard about it before this webinar. Has it been released? Is this 365 or different to that? Yeah, so this has been in the making. We released our first early limited access release in R2. We're doing a full-fledged one in R3 now. There are still a few improvements on the way in R4 and potentially in R1 as well. But by then, it's going to be sweet. So hopefully you try this now, set it up for your templates going forward as soon as possible, and that'll be really good. This is different to 365. This is a slightly different way to build Word documents, but Pete can answer a little more on that. But yeah.
Sorry, what was the question about?
Yeah, is this 365 different to that? It is. We are building this outside of Microsoft 365 Word documents. So yeah,
that's correct. We're not using Microsoft Word itself to build these Word document outputs. We're using a different technology stack, completely separate from Word, which seems to be much more efficient than building it using Word. But it does mean that there are some limitations which Jamie has already mentioned, which we're working through.
Yep. As Julie has mentioned, it uses XML instead of MS Word. So this is another XML-based output that we are introducing. Is there a KC article for this process that's detailed? Jamie, do you want to take that? Jamie's screen is frozen. Yeah, we will have comprehensive documentation coming through. As there's already some for R2, and there's a completely independent new section for New Word, and we have been building it more and more with R2 and R3. We'll create some videos as well, hopefully by R3 when R3 hits. Yeah, that answers your question. There are new comments coming in as well. Yes. Given you are using yeah, did I publish everything? Yep. Yep, that's all the thing that's there.
Actually, Matthew Kelson, I had a really great question.
Okay.
Given you are using a new tech stack, what will be required for OP installs with the publishing server? Nothing at all. You don't need to
Nothing at
worry
all.
about the background tech stack. We take care of that. All you do is change your publishing profile to use New Word instead of Word Legacy and publish.
What needed. Okay, we've got another question. We recently had issues with our company policy requiring data classification labels to be set on Word documents. This prevented legacy Word from publishing. How is this dealt in New Word? Is this about sensitivity labels? Yeah. We need to do a little more analysis internally on this one. We did give it a go at some stage in last month or so, but that investigation is ongoing, and we will only be able to confirm sometime, yeah, by R4. That's still slightly unknown at this stage. Sorry, I'm not too helpful on that. Yes. Are there instructions or will there be help on steps we need to take for this? 100%, there will be a lot of documentation made that will be made available. If there are issues and problems, you can always raise customer tickets, and our wonderful team, Julie and all, will be able to help and guide you and point you to the right docs. So 100%, there's a lot of help available to you.
Sorry about tipping out there, as I hope my co-workers mentioned, my internet just dropped out. What a time to have that happen. Have I missed much, Hubby?
We've answered a few questions, which you can see in the published section now. But there was one question around documentation, and will there be enough help available? Written help, that is documentation. So yeah.
Have we answered that already?
Yeah, I mean, I just said talk to Jamie.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. And obviously, if there isn't enough documentation or something is missing, you're quite welcome to use our feedback function or even email me directly. I've put my direct email in the community a few times, so it's out there now. jamie.simmonds@authorite.com. Flick it through and I'll see if I can get us to create it for you.
Yep. Alison, if we have any other questions, should we put it in a support ticket or reach out to our product managers? Yeah, all channels are good. So Alison, if you want to talk to Paula and bring those requests in through that channel, you can always, if there's a legit bug and you want it to be tracked through the support channel, that's available as well. You also have my details, so maybe reach out to me as well if something comes up. But definitely, yeah, all these avenues are standard mechanisms, and we can always address those concerns through normal process.
Alison, I've just responded to your comment with the exact Knowledge Center link for Authorite Cloud for New Word publishing as well. In case somebody hadn't already, it's easy if you're using Author on-premise. It's quite easy to flick between those two. It's just a toggle in the top left on the page.
Yeah, sorry, Jamie, go for it.
I was just going to ask if we'd answered the question about data classification labels.
Yeah, no, I've deferred it for now because we still have an investigation that's ongoing internally, and that will require a little more dwelling and making sure that uh, it's actually doable. That's the first thing, you know.
Yep, fair enough. Either way, I'll make a note for author it to create some documentation on that specific topic, perhaps as an FAQ or as a troubleshooting point.
Sure.
I'm about to butcher your name. I'm really sorry. It's either Regine or Regina, or probably some third thing I can't think of. Sorry about that. Feel free to email me directly on that point so that I can respond to you when that documentation is created and you have some visibility on that.
Yep. There's something new. Look, not really. I think we have exhausted all our questions. And in case if there are more, please keep them coming later on as well through whatever channels you feel comfortable, through community or through account management or support tickets. We would really love to hear your feedback on this going forward, because it's important for us that we understand how your setup is. And yeah, please reach out to us. We want to make this as better as possible as soon as possible. So yeah, we're trying our best to make this a great experience. Yeah, thank you so much.
Cool. Sounds like we're there. As Abba said, thank you everyone for joining us today. There's supports details at the bottom of the screen if you do want to get in touch. And I'll do my best to tidy up these slides at the end and give them to the people who've intended if you'd like a copy of those or make them available in some way. Brilliant. That's us. Have a good one.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys.